eBird checklists can be a thing of beauty. Not all of them, but some of them are amazing, almost unbelievable snapshots of natural history moments. From the famous Tadoussac list with over 700,000 birds to the rarity laden lists from remote places, eBird checklists have become treasure troves of amazing bird photos, but that's where they stop. Birding takes us to beautiful places. We often find other animals, and even without a rare and unusual species, just the experience can be a core memory. And now, eBird is about to make checklists even more stunning by letting us add these non-bird media. If you're new here, I'm Doug Hitchcox. My goal is to get the most people to see the most birds, and in this video I'm going to give you a preview of eBird's soon-to-be-released feature, Checklist Media. I need to be clear that as I'm making this video, Checklist Media is still in beta, and there is a good chance that some of the features will change. Actually, for one of my biggest gripes, they've already announced a future fix for, but man, I hope it doesn't take too long. Let's start with a quick overview of exactly what checklist media is. You'll now be able to add media that fits into one of these three categories: habitat, soundscape, experience, or other animals. You'll upload these the same way that you add bird photos to your list, except you'll see sections for each category now at the top of the list. Note this is still done via a web browser, not through the app. eBird has given us some guidance for each of these, but I'll hit the key points and make sure to point out some of the intriguing nuggets, especially ones teasing future uses of these new media subjects. With the habitat photos, eBird says you can upload anything to showcase the environment where birds were observed. So not only the wide-angle landscapes, but you can use this category for plant life. They do specifically say to avoid human-made landmarks, although I'm seeing a number of those prominently featured in this already. But those landmarks, plus distant scenery like a far-off mountaintop, weather events, or most landscapes with people prominently in them, should use the experience category, but we'll talk about that in a minute. When you upload habitat photos, you'll see a new field called Caption that serves as a title. You have 300 characters to describe the habitat or how it was used. Another field lets you add the birds observed in that habitat, which you can select from the species on your list to add here. The important thing is that those species were interacting with the habitat that is pictured. As a quick example, here's a shot from a trip to Peru that I took last year. We took a boat around Isla Pucasana looking for surf syncloides, and also checking these birds on the open oceanside cliffs where many Peruvian pelicans, red-legged, and guaneye cormorants were present. I just labeled the photo Oceanside Roosting Cliffs and then tagged those species in it. It's worth noting that you can only tag the species that are on your list, but eBird points out that if the habitat looks good for a certain species, you can mention it in the comments or media notes. The important piece to tagging species is that you'll be able to search those habitat photos by the species that use them. It's a pretty exciting new feature for eBird. As a quick side tip I want to mention, if like me, you're a Mac user and going to upload a bunch of photos from your phone to your list, you're probably well aware that eBird does not allow you to upload the HEIC or HEIF photos. Do yourself a favor and use Automator to set up a quick action to directly convert these to JPEGs. Also in this category are soundscapes, meant for audio recordings that aren't focused on a single species. They give examples like a dawn chorus or noisy mixed flock, which, as we were just talking about with the habitat photos, you can tag all the species in the recording. You could always tag background species in the previous species-specific recordings, but this seems a bit more important to do with these soundscapes. I found it interesting that one example they include is a babbling brook with no audible birds. This feels like a gray area, especially since they exclude weather events from habitat, but I think that as long as the audio is capturing some habitat that the bird could have used, even if the bird wasn't audible in the recording, then it's still appropriate to add here. I want to make a big plug to make sure that you are processing your audio correctly before uploading. The Macaulay library is already loaded with barely audible recordings of species because they weren't normalized, so brush up on your audio uploading best practices before adding any soundscapes. I do love that eBird provided us with a why this media is important section, because I think a lot of people don't understand how eBird data gets used. For habitat photos, they say it can be used to improve bird occurrence models, presumably by ground truthing the habitat layer they use, but they also mention using the photos over time to track habitat change at a location. So clearly some long-term planning going on here. With soundscapes, they specifically mention using them to help train Merlin Sound ID to recognize species within a busy recording. The next new category feels like a catch-all for all the photos that you maybe want to put in habitat, but they don't show a habitat a bird was interacting with. So eBird says this is for documenting your visit to include things like trail maps, landmarks, buildings, weather events, and notes or sketches related to the checklist. Things get gray here quickly as they also mention using this for food and restaurants, but make the point that images must be taken from the exact time, location, and date of the checklist, so no scenery or indoor spaces that were nearby. This sounds pretty straightforward, but I'll bet we don't even make it through this migration season, at least after Checklist Media goes live, before we see someone's Lifer pie from Blackberry Corners on a checklist from Maggie Marsh with their Lifer Kirtland's warbler on it. This will be a funny space to watch, but it holds a lot of potential for making eBird lists more helpful to birders visiting that site. For so long, we've really only had the map pinned from the list and maybe some notes, but these experience photos can show really helpful things like trail conditions or tips on finding the bird while you're there. As an example, for future inspiration, I went back and added these photos of signs that I made at Maine Audubon's Gilsland Farm after finding the state's second record of sage thrasher there. There are so many experiences of birding that really are just fun, and I'm happy eBird added this category to allow us to archive these memories. An interesting thing to consider is how eBird is handling photos with people in them. They do discourage photos of people prominently featured, but I'm sure we'll see plenty of selfies. Even I couldn't resist. With privacy in mind, uploaded photos will automatically detect if there are people in them and add a person tag, which prevents these images from appearing in most public views. They are still visible to the person who uploaded the photos and anyone on the shared checklist. I haven't tested this out as much as I'd like, but it'll be interesting to see how often the automatic tag either misses a person or applies it when it shouldn't. The last new category for checklist media is for animals other than birds. This is awesome because sometimes the highlight of a birding outing is a chance encounter with a mammal, or I've even got checklists from outings completely focused on finding a rare tiger beetle, and we can finally include that media here. I really appreciate that eBird quickly encourages people to use iNaturalist for the majority of their non-bird sightings. iNaturalist is built for these, having great AI tools to identify a species and then a community review process to mark records as research grade. Which gets me to one of my biggest questions, or really concerns, with checklist media, which is wondering how these data will be reviewed. At the time of this recording, there are no filters, but eBird says that they're going to create regional filters based on iNaturalist data to limit initial search suggestions to species known from that region. There is a report button on checklist photos, which currently directs to a Google form to submit the type of issue and a description, but we don't have any information on what the review process will look like yet. Anyways, ultimately all eBird and iNaturalist records end up in the same repository, GBIF, so there is no need to be duplicating records from one to the other. I'm planning on copying some of my photos from iNat if there are a direct link to the birds observed, like some associations of mammals and fish with flocks of seabirds, but I plan to keep most of my records, especially for phenological indicators like my first morning cloak of the year, to iNat, where it'll be more useful. That said, if eBird ever adds listing features for non-birds, then be a game changer. The one obvious shortcoming of the other animal category is the database only includes mammals, reptiles, and amphibians, which you can submit to the family, genus, species, or subspecies level. For other taxa, you need to enter the name, either common, scientific, or both. I'm worried this will lead to a lot of errors with people not using standardized names. One issue being without that association, any future taxonomic updates will fall on the uploader. I see species get updates all the time on iNat, and I never would have known about that otherwise, and I certainly wouldn't know how to keep track of those records and keep them updated within eBird's database now, especially because those records may be hard to find. When searching in the Macaulay Library, you can filter down to the species of mammals, reptiles, and amphibians, but these other taxa aren't currently searchable, which makes sense since we entered our own text for the name. You can find many of these species names in their database, showing as you search, but again, nothing comes up. I think this is a sign that this will be changing, but I'm surprised they wouldn't have it set up, especially if it was coming soon. I have no insider info on this, but I'm going to hold off uploading too many insects until they get this working. This is a good time to mention that they do have sensitive species protocol for any species listed as near threatened or higher on the IUCN Red List. They also have filters based on NatureServe conservation ranks, another tag iNaturalist users will be familiar with, which obscures these records much in the same way that we see with their sensitive species of birds. The records are still wholly visible to the uploader, but the exact location, date, and checklist are obscured from public outputs. One flaw worth pointing out here goes back to the issue of the non-mammal, reptile, or amphibian records not being linked to anything. So if I upload a photo of an endangered insect right now, while iNaturalist obscures the location, as with any sensitive species, eBird doesn't know that, and now the record with its date and location are visible to anyone. The only workaround I've currently found is making your checklist hidden, which will keep the media off any public output, but then none of the data are available. For more info, I recommend reading eBird's full article in the Help Center on checklist media. I'll link it below, especially because it goes into more detail and it answers a bunch of FAQs that I don't think are worth getting into in this video. If you found this video helpful, please help me out by hitting that like button, and I'd really appreciate you tapping subscribe while you're clicking around down there. I've got more niche birding content in the works, and this is the best way to make sure that you don't miss it and to help me with my goal of getting the most people to see the most birds. Thanks for watching.